when you go to a wedding, like bridal arrangement agency or whatever, and you fill out your forms and you say, you want this and you want that, like when they ask you, do you want a priest? Is
Like
there a
check
box
here
that
for
you can
foreigner.
check? Yeah, do you want a foreign priest or do you want a Japanese priest?
How many centimeters tall is your minimum?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony, and
And I'm Ryan.
all right. So today's question is, because every episode, of course, we ask one question. That's what Ichimon Japan means. One question, and
And this is a question everyone always wonders, I think.
yes, yes. Everybody has been wondering. I've been getting like 10 email every day asking me this. So here we go. All right, here we go. What's it like being a fake priest in Japan? Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Ta-da! So, all right. So very briefly, so in Japan, of course, there people do get married, right? That is a thing that happens.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yes. It may be less than before, from as if you were to believe news reports, but there are still people that get married, and some people really like to get married in like the Christian-ish wedding chapels.
Joking
And
aside, I think that's by far the most popular style now.
yeah, yeah, you definitely see that a lot. Sometimes you do see like the Shinto, shrine
That
wedding.
still exists, but
I don't think it's yeah. I
yeah.
agree. It doesn't seem like it's as common. And part of the whole getting married at a chapel is that you have somebody, some kind of officiator, that does the whole like I pronounce you man and wife and takes you through the whole ceremony. And it's very, very common. I ran across this in Japanese media, but if you actually go to a chapel, you'll probably see it too. You see usually, and I've only seen white guys. I've never seen anybody that's not a white male do this. You see a white guy dressed like a priest officiating, and they are actually like probably 99% of the time or most of the time they are not like legitimate priests. They are just a guy doing this as a part-time job. And they just get some money and they do the thing, and the Japanese people are happy that they just got married in a nice ceremony and everybody's happy. And that's just how it is. This is a very common thing. Ryan, had you heard of this being a thing in Japan before we started talking about this?
Before this question, no. But I
Oh,
mean, I don't really follow weddings that closely.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we're gonna spoiler alert, we recorded the outro before this, but we're going to talk about media, like how they get portrayed in the media, but in the outro. But that's how I discovered them, through like watching just Japanese TV stuff, and then I've never been to an actual like wedding, right? Uh,
Like I've seen the idea of foreigner priests, but I didn't know they were fake.
Yeah, yeah. So there's actually like if you look this up in Japanese, you do see the term nisebokushi, right? So nise
Nisebokushi.
as in nisemono, fake, and then bokushi in this case is a priest. Is I believe technically speaking, if I'm remembering correctly, it's a Protestant priest, and
Oh.
then a Catholic priest. The technical term is a shinpu. Like I think it's written God
Okay, because
Father.
yeah, it's like father, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but usually you just hear the term nisebokushi, which literally translates to fake priest. But um, neither of us have experience as fake priests. Uh,
Unfortunately.
unfortunately. And again, as I just said, we don't have experience going to weddings. So rather than just researching this and telling secondhand information, I interviewed somebody that has firsthand experience of this, and he is somebody that I met through my job as the editor in chief of Wasabi Magazine, a magazine published in Hawaii that does cover a lot of Japan related stuff. He wrote a wonderful article on his experiences as a fake priest. His name is Daniel Legari. He's in Canada, and he's been writing just great articles for us for like 2 years now, or maybe a little bit more. And this is one of them. So you can go check it out. I will include a link in the show notes. So this is a little bit of a long interview, but we will come back after. Stick around, and we're going to talk a little bit more. So this is a special extra long episode. So hope you enjoy it. Where are you calling in from, Daniel?
Calling in from Fredericton, New Brunswick, on the far east coast of Canada.
Cool. All right. So I have to admit I had not heard of New Brunswick, maybe just in passing
That's
until
okay.
I met you.
Most Canadians don't know where it is either.
So now Dan's had a whole bunch of interesting experiences in Japan. And one very interesting one that I wanted to talk about today was your experience working as a quote unquote fake priest.
That's right.
So, yeah. So how did that come about? How did you land this interesting job?
Well, I got this job from as I was referred by a friend.
Hmm.
So I was working on the JET program, teaching English, as many people do to kind of get their foot in the door. And a friend of mine had was doing it, and then he he told me about it, and I kind of didn't really believe him at first because I didn't know it was a thing. But yeah, he came up to me and he asked me if I wanted to do this, and
Hmm.
so that's how I basically got started.
Mm, okay. So did he like call you up on the phone, or did he say like, oh, did he run into you at work or something, or how did that come
Right.
about? Mhm.
Well, to try to make the story, I guess, a little bit more interesting, of course, um, he on a Friday, on a weekend, he invited me out for some drinks, and
uh,
normally he lived down the road, so he wasn't far at all.
mhm.
And normally every Friday we'd go out, not just him and I, but a group of other English teachers would get together. And but this time it was just him and I was kind of like,
Mhm.
I was like, okay, cool, that's awesome. So we have a few drinks downtown, and then he tells me that there's another reason why he invited me here today.
Mhm.
And so he asked me at first to keep it a secret because
Mhm.
it's something he didn't really want people to know.
Yeah.
Uh, so he showed me a picture on his phone of him in this like long white robe and a and with a crucifix around his neck. And I'm just kind of, and I was like, what am I looking at here? And he says, well, I on the weekends I'm a priest.
Uh-huh.
And and I just kind of laughed at him. I was like, okay, like that's weird, that's funny, and kind of
Yeah.
interesting. But he said, yeah, he was serious about it. And I asked him, okay, why are you telling me this? And he goes, well, I'm leaving soon, like my contract's ending and I need someone to take it over. Just looks at me and just goes like, so. And that's when I was offered to become a priest,
Uh-huh.
to marry
Yeah.
people. And of course, I had a lot of
Yeah.
questions, a lot of questions. But we sat down over a few beers. He answered them, and after about an hour of me like making sure this was
Mhm.
real, um, I accepted an offer to go watch him do one of his weddings, and so I kind of got to see. I went one morning with him and kind of got to see what he did. Shadowed him really, just from the outside.
Mhm.
Hopefully, no one saw that I was in there, and I watched him do it. And afterwards, he said, "Do you want to do it?" And I thought, "Sure. This seems like something I could do." And I mean, it paid pretty well too, so I thought that would be a decent thing.
So about how much does one of these gigs pay?
When I
Yeah.
did it, it was Ichimon so 10,000 yen per
Yeah.
wedding. And I do know that in the past it used to be a lot
Yeah.
more. There was another guy that I met who did it, who had been doing it for a long time, and he went down to Ichimon Gosen, so 15,000
Mhm.
N, uh, and he refused to go any lower because he'd been doing it for so long. But he was saying before, it could be up to 2.5,
Yeah.
um, and but now the business has grown so much; it's kind of exploded since the '90s and early 2000s.
Uh-huh.
Um, that there's a lot of competition, so the prices go down. And I have heard of people doing it for less.
Huh.
Um, but I was happy. Like I had no idea. I'd be down every weekend. I'd do on average two or three, sometimes one on the busy on the busy weekend, sometimes I'd do 6 or 7, like
Jeez.
4 one day and then 3 the next. That was only a couple of weekends per year, like prime time wedding time.
Right.
But when you get home after the last one, and even in just normal times, you get home on Sunday afternoon, and you thought, okay, I worked about 4 hours today. I just made $300. Like, yeah, like I'll keep doing this.
Yeah. So 10,000 yen is roughly about $100. So that's pretty good money.
Yeah, give or take. It is.
Yeah.
I will jump in and also say though, like at first, of course, the money is what got me hired, but I didn't really keep doing it for the money in the end. The job was actually very rewarding and enjoyable, and it was something that I was happy to do. But I do it for free? No, of course not. But it was never something that when I went to work, I didn't feel like, oh, I just got to make the money and get out of there. Like, I kind of felt that way about the job I was working, during the week. Eventually, the teaching job, and that's a whole other podcast you could get into a debate about.
Definitely. I mean, I have that kind of experience too, so maybe that's something we can talk about in the future. But
sure, if you want to get into that. And I love Japan, but then I sometimes find myself like bashing it. I'm just kind of like, oh, do I really love this? Why did I do this?
Yeah. No, I get it.
But if I went back to Japan permanently, which is not impossible, or at least for a few more years, one of the first things I'm going to do is contact a guy that I was working for and say, do you still need someone? Because I'd be more than happy to jump in. And the owner, who is also an actual priest, if he heard this, I don't know if he'd like it if I called it a fake priest, because he was at those moments, I was, a priest to him. And, I was part of I was not just an employee doing this for the money. He was really he was a real priest, a true Christian. And he, I'm kind of derailing here from what you.
That's all right. No. So, let's go back to the beginning in a way. So you show up. You say you're going to do the job. Is there some kind of training? Do they give you like a manual? How do you prepare to do this job?
Right. So I asked the boss, the guy who owned the company, again, the Christian guy. He's from Holland, and he came to Japan in the 70s or 80s to preach, and eventually started doing the weddings. He was one of the first, I think, or one of the first of a handful. And I asked him the same thing, because I straight up told him when I started, look, am I, is this okay? Is this morally acceptable? Like, should I be doing this? And am I qualified, or am I capable? And I still remember exactly what he told me. He looked at me the whole time. He had this big smile on his face, and he spoke so calmly, and he was actually a very, very nice man to speak to. He just seemed always so happy to talk to anybody. And he just goes, he says something along the lines of, as long as you have happiness in your heart, which I thought was extremely cheesy when I heard it, but I also thought it was kind of sweet. Like, that's kind of cute. Okay, sure. Right. So let's just go on. So he told me that there's a script, and I just follow the script. The only thing that changes is I got to make sure I get the names right. And that was, so if there was one thing I took extremely seriously, was making sure I knew the names. And I used little kind of the smallest Post-its you can get, like the single ones that you use to tag books and stuff. And I would put the names in the areas in the script and make sure that even before the wedding started, that I kind of, in my head, and sometimes said their names like 10 times or something, to make sure that because sometimes I would do weddings one after the other. Like in the busy season, it would be, 3-4 hours, like 1, 2, 3, 4, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. You just bang, 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 bang. And you don't want to be doing a wedding and then say the name of someone else. Right. right? There's someone filming, the family's there, and then if you don't want to make that mistake. When my friend who had hired me told me as we were practicing that he said that if this is how you get fired from this job, you do, there's wiggle room, but this is where there's no wiggle room. So it's not hard, it's not difficult. You can mess up the script a bit. Your Japanese can be a little bit, it doesn't even have to be perfect, but do not mess up the name. So, my friend and I, the guy wasn't from where I was living in Fukushima. He was from Kobe, so he had traveled to see me. So the guy my friend who had referred me, he kind of showed me how to do it. I had watched it once, and then I went to his apartment, and we actually used inanimate objects to say this is the bride and groom. It was it's like a pot and a broom, and he would pretend to be the father and bring the broom down the aisle, so to speak, and because everything as it was scripted, so were the movements and stuff. So I had to know when to say things like, now, please turn and look at each other, or please take the ring, or please do this and please do that. So everything had its place, everything had its time. It was a ceremony, and everything happened exactly the same for everyone. So before I started, I would practice with him a little bit for a couple hours. Once I kind of had it, I would practice by myself, actually at school. So I think as you know, sometimes working as a public school teacher, you sometimes have some downtime.
Yeah, there's plenty.
In some of the schools, like the mountain schools, I'd get taxied up there at 8:30, and then they don't pick you up till 3, and you've only got one class in the morning and one class in the afternoon. So, and the classes have 6 or 7 students, so they just fly by, and so you've got hours. Normally during that time, I would write or work on lesson plans. But after a while, though, you just kind of do everything. So again, I'm going off topic here.
It's all right.
I would go into classrooms, and it was great because I could use the center of the classroom as the aisle, and and every classroom had most classrooms had kind of a little thing the teacher would use to put his books and stuff, so I could stand as the pulpit. I would just kind of practice by myself. I would pretend that the rings were there. I would say the script over and over. I'd have the script with me. And the script was taped inside of a Bible. So I would give a Bible, and I taped it in the pages. And so I always had it with me. And for the first few weddings, of course I was a little bit nervous, and I just tried to read the script and then say it. But eventually, I had the script down packed, and I don't really remember much of it anymore. But if I could probably still say some of it if I wanted to, because that's how much I practiced it. That's how much I made sure that it was correct. So yeah. So I practiced at schools, and then the next thing I knew, it was my first wedding, and away I went.
Cool. So, okay. So then it's the day of the wedding, and then do you get to meet the bride and groom beforehand, or are you guys just totally separated? You just show up all of a sudden and do your thing, disappear? How does the procedure go?
Right. I do meet them, but very briefly, and not enough to really establish any kind of meaningful connection. Just honestly, I didn't even have to meet them if I didn't want to, but I kind of did. I mean, I had to, but it's not like I had to say anything to them. Yeah. But I was just part of my personality. I was most of the time they weren't nervous. This was a big day, so I try to make them feel comfortable. Say things like, hi, I'm Dan. I'm from Canada. Have you ever been to Canada? Have you ever traveled? Planning on traveling at all, or for your honeymoon? And hey, we're gonna have so much fun today. It's great. Don't worry about it. You guys look awesome. I would just kind of compliment them and try to put them at ease. And and that was about maybe, I'd have between 5 and 10 minutes before the weddings normally to do that. And so, and then after that, I didn't see them. So the the priests and everyone that's involved in the ceremony are there for that purpose only. And I would never go to a reception. I would never be a part of anything else outside of that. Like that was my purpose, and that's it. There's nothing after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So you do the ceremony and a reception, but sometimes, like there would be, like I remember in the article that you wrote, like there was a mention of like the broccoli and that kind of stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
Could you explain that?
Right. So I mean, just like ceremonies in North America, there's tiny little traditions that people like to do or pass down, and one thing here is the flower toss, where the bride will have a bouquet of flowers and she throws it to all their bridesmaids and they all try to catch it, and it's supposed to have some kind of modicum of symbolism, but really it's just for fun.
Yeah.
Well, they do that in Japan too, except it's not flour; it's a head of broccoli and or cauliflower. I still remember the first time I saw it. I walked into I actually had no idea what was happening, and then I walked outside as I led everyone out, and everyone started piling outside as they do to just chat for a second before heading off, and then someone just hands me this broccoli. And it was all wrapped up like really nice, like a bouquet would be, right? Like has like nice paper and all that stuff, and I looked at this person, and I was like, what do you want me to do with this? Like, is this a gift? Like, am I being gifted some broccoli or something? And and then actually no, wait, let me come to think of it. It did surprise me when it happened, but actually, now that you mention it, I remember my friend telling me about it. I remember my buddy saying, like, "Hey, man, sometimes they do this broccoli toss." And I was like, okay, yeah, that's weird. But I had forgotten completely about it until someone gave me the broccoli, and I was like, "Oh, is this actually a thing? Really? Okay, all right." So it's not the bride who would throw it; it was the groom. The groom would throw it, and all of his friends would gather up, and they'd all try to catch this broccoli. And then so I went up to one of the women who worked with me, and I said, "What's the whole point of this?" And she just goes, "Oh, it's just for fun."
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean? She goes, "Oh, doesn't mean anything. Whoever gets it gets to eat broccoli." And I'm like, "Okay, well, all right then. That's fine. They could do that." So at one place, I did the weddings at 2 or 3 different locations, and one of the locations always had me kind of counting down. I'd go 3, 2, 1, fly broccoli, fly, and it would throw it. So, but anywhere else, like either I wasn't there or it was right outside after they took some pictures.
Right.
Usually the very last thing I would do in most places before I went back in and cleaned up was they would do like a flower petal toss. Like everyone would receive like flower petals in their hands. And then the bride and groom would come in and they would walk in between everyone, and everyone would throw the flower petals. That kind of nice little, as they exit the church in America, everyone's throwing like the confetti or flower petals and stuff.
Yeah, or like rice, right? Like in the West, you often see rice. I'd never seen flower petals.
Funny enough, I've never saw rice in an Asian country like Japan, and no one ever.
Oh man, I never thought about that.
In my head right now, it'd be like, why would you throw rice? We eat that.
It doesn't make any sense.
I'm like, why would you throw broccoli? It's the same thing. So
that's a good point. Yeah, that's food. Why are you throwing rice?
Exactly. Rice is important, but broccoli. Throw that stuff everywhere.
Anyway.
Yeah. So then they would do the broccoli toss, and usually I was just like, okay, you just stay for this, whatever. Clap, clap, clap. Yeah. Okay, we're done. And I would go back to that.
So would the whole thing from beginning to end take like about an hour or less?
Oh God, no, 25 minutes.
Oh, okay.
22 to 25 minutes. Like the way everything was streamlined. And these places, these kind of chapels, which were actually just kind of wedding halls, like that had everything. They had your reception zone. They had like a special entryway, multiple entryways, multiple places for many weddings to happen at the same time. And they would just, one wedding party would come in the chapel, and then somewhere else in the building, another one would be getting ready, like doing the other stuff that they do, like, saying the bride and groom coming in and saying, meeting each other, and then saying, some people saying stuff. While that's happening, I'm doing a wedding. And as soon as they leave, we have about, a few minutes, usually maybe 20 minutes to put out pamphlets again, make sure no one forgot anything, put everything nice, make sure I got the rings and get everything correct. And then the next one would come right in. And so it was like this conveyor belt of families and weddings that would happen. So that was always really interesting.
Wow. Yeah, it's like the bullet train. Like they have 7 minutes to clean everything.
I've seen them do that. They're ridiculous. Like they flip the chairs around. They go through that train like so fast.
Yeah, it's sparkling clean, and it's 7 minutes and in and out and done, and they're on time.
Absolutely.
And,
Like I might have my gripes about Japan, but some of it has it so right. They do it so well.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so then what did you enjoy about the job? What did you find rewarding about it?
Well, I honestly everything. As I said, I never had a day where I woke up and thought to myself, I don't want to do this. It was always, let's go. Like, this is great. Everyone I worked with was wonderful for the most part. Like I worked with a team of women who were all played a different role. A couple of them would sing. A couple of them were excellent, beautiful singers. There was always an organ player. Once in a while, depending on what the wedding party wanted, they could hire more musicians. So sometimes they would hire people to play trumpet or people to play the flute and stuff like that. Rarely, but it would happen. So, and a couple of helpers that would kind of, help people sit down, help them get up, be there for the bride and groom for whatever they needed. So it was me and a team of 4 or 5 women, sometimes less, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on the size of the wedding. And it was always the same kind of group that would, there was about 10 or 12 women that, sometimes I'd see some and sometimes I'd see others. Like we didn't always work together every time, but they were all great to work with. And I never, we'd always have a rehearsal, and there was always, hey, let's feel good. Let's do good today. Like, ganbarimashou. Like, let's really kind of put it in. And then the weddings I always thought were a lot of fun, because when you're there in the moment, you realize, this wasn't just a job. This was somebody's special day. And you didn't have to work there to be working to kind of know that was happening, because the atmosphere was there. Everyone was dressed extravagantly. Like their friends had beautiful kimonos and all the guys had suits. The parents were there. They were smiling. There was a lot of sonkeigo and keigo, a lot of respectful talk going on, and a lot of things happening, a lot of bowing on our part, a lot of bowing on their part. And you just kind of got that feeling like this is a big day. And that always just kind of made me feel kind of nice, like if you were to kind of stumble upon someone having a wedding in the park, right? You never look at the bride and groom and go like, oh God, like what a pay.
That's always a nice thing. Like, oh, a wedding.
Oh, what a nice day for them. You always kind of have that feeling, like, oh, good for them. Like, oh, the weather is great and everyone's partying. Like, you can, even if you're not part of the wedding and you're watching it from 50 feet away, you're just kind of like, they're having a good time. I'm happy for them. And that's the kind of the whole way I felt during the whole thing. There wasn't really any specific moment that made me feel like super good or happy. It was every bit of it was, an important and special, fun experience. If I were to actually get specific, sorry,
Yeah, no,
The
please
only
go ahead.
times that really became interesting is when something either unexpected or when usually sometimes the groom would be mortified, like absolutely terrified of that day. The brides were almost always totally cool, but sometimes the
Yeah.
grooms were so nervous. You could see that you had, like I said, there were helpers. They would be there beside him with like a
Yeah.
towel for him to like brush his forehead off, like from the sweat. And I'd ask them to, take the ring, and their hands would be like shaking so hard. And so that when they'd say their vows, it'd be like, what boku ga, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, dude, just chill. Like, this is fine. Like, this is great. And it always kind of put a little bit of tension during a wedding, but it also kind of made it like, oh, this hasn't happened before. Like, what are we going to deal with kind of situation. So.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, like it's fun to see going on, but also it's clear that you felt that you had purpose, that you were working together with other people to bring something together, something which unfortunately sometimes lacks from certain English teaching jobs.
Oh, yeah.
So I totally get that. Like you feel like a sense of like accomplishment, right?
You know what? I think, geez, I spoke for about 10 minutes straight, but I think you just hit it in that one sentence.
Yeah.
You did feel like you were a part of the day, and that you had a purpose, and you weren't really doing it for yourself either. So that kind of also brought a little bit of that feeling of kindness and humility. So that was always a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. So you've had a few interesting experiences, it seems like, when you were working as the priest job. But one that you mentioned in the article involved somebody just asking you to bless their child, right? Could you explain how what that was about? Like what happened?
Yeah, well, simply put, there was a wedding that happened, and at the end of the wedding, I go towards the doors and bow as everybody leaves, say thank you very much. It's just thank you very much, bow, 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 bow. And this woman came with a wheelchair, and with her, what I presumed was her son, in a wheelchair. And the boy had, the guy was, I wouldn't say he was a boy. He was an adult, but he had obviously a severe special needs, disability of some kind. And so when everyone shuffled out, one of the helpers came to me and asked me that this woman wanted to see me. And so I went up to her, and she basically asked me to bless her child. And in my head, this is not something that I'm qualified for. This is something that this is all my internal monologue. Like I actually, because one of the things I made sure to say was that, I don't really believe in God and stuff like that, even though I kind of preached it during these weddings.
Right. But you said that to the guy that hired you, right?
Yeah, I told him like, hey, I am not a religious person, and he goes, that's fine. Right. But again, I wasn't, like I said, when you're there, you're doing it. I was playing a role, and it just, even if I wasn't a priest, like if someone asked me to say something nice about their kid with a disability or bless their child, I'd give it my best shot. And so there I was, as a priest at the time. So I did what a priest would do. I tried my best to bless him. I got down on one knee, put my hand on his hand/knee, like he had his hands toward his knee. So I took his hand, and I just whispered some really kind words and said things along the lines of, may God protect you, and may His light fill your life with kindness, you and your family, and may you find. I don't remember exactly what I said, but some nice stuff. Because honestly, I didn't know what to say. What does that exactly mean to bless somebody, right? I could have just said like, I bless you, but I wanted to make it seem more than just that. You can't just go down on one knee and say, I bless you, and then get up. So
Sure.
yeah, I got down and I blessed him as best as I could.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it was it didn't really matter what I believed. It was all about just making this a really special day. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting experience that stuck with me because no one's ever asked me to do that before. So yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough situation to be in, right? It's like, what do you say? It's like, no, I actually blah, blah, blah. And then they just kind of leave like all like, oh, sad or whatever.
I probably get a phone call after that,
Yeah.
I actually, now that you mention it, I do remember on a couple of occasions, the bride and groom, when I met them at the beginning, asking me how long I'd been a priest or like where I studied to be a priest. And I mean, I was always just like, North America. I obviously was not going to be like, oh, this is just a part-time job.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I'm not a real priest. Because even if they came up to me and be like, you're not a real priest, all right? Like I know what you're doing. Like this is just a job for you. Yeah. I would basically, play the fool. I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like this is, I also couldn't just go around being like, hey, you know what? This was all just a farce kind of thing. I wasn't going to do that. Like that's.
Yeah. No, it's tough, right? Like you're there to do a thing and you want to do it as good as you can. And I think for the most part, Japanese people are aware that this is a job, right? The majority of people in this position are not like actual priests that have done, seminary school and all that. But I guess there's still some people that are not clear on that.
Yeah. I mean, but that's fine. Like, again, it was part of my job. So, regardless, I was happy to do it from the blessing to anything.
Yeah.
I think if they asked me to perform an exorcism, I would try that too.
But you
don't know how successful I'd be.
You did consult with the actual, like the boss, the priest, when the blessing thing happened, right? You did like say like, so this happened. Is that okay? Like,
I think so. I'm pretty sure I did. I don't really remember it.
Yeah.
But I think one day, during like a work party, because we had once a year he'd come and we'd get together and he'd thank me and just kind of go out to an izakaya or something, right? And have a few bites to eat. Mm-hmm. I think I mentioned that to him at that time, or that the word somehow got to him, and he asked me, "Did you bless somebody?" And I was like, "Whoa, oh yeah, something." One of those two things I think happened. Yeah, and he was like, "Oh, thank you for doing that. That's so kind of you." So that was all really I could have asked for.
Good. No, that's good. I'm glad he understands. Because it's like I said, it's a tough situation to be in when somebody suddenly like throws something like that at you. Like, what are you going to do?
Right. You played a role.
Yeah. So, all right. So then, did anything like funny, crazy, weird ever happen like during your time on the job?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, please.
Yeah, one specific thing I'll never forget, and it goes up there with one of the most ridiculous moments of something that's ever happened at work. I have some similar stories from other jobs, but in those jobs, they're more likely to happen. As a bartender, you'll see crazy things that drunk people will do.
Yeah.
But not at a wedding, at least not a Japanese one. So I was doing a wedding. Everything was going fine. And the bride and groom had just kissed. Like they had just, I just said, you may now kiss the bride.
Right.
The organ, da, 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 and they kissed. Everybody clapped. I said, now please turn towards the crowd. So they turn and face the crowd. So this is important because they're not facing me anymore.
Yeah.
And the camera that's filming them is out of view. So the camera is to my left, and kind of on the side, and it's one of those big. It's not just a little camcorder. It's a big. They hired a big camera, like an actual cameraman to take like pro footage.
Yeah.
So there's a professional cameraman there with this massive tripod and this huge like television camera. And I say the words I will now make an official, pronouncement, like sengen itashimasu, like like that kind of thing. And at that moment, I hear this sound, and it kind of goes like a whoosh, like a whoosh.
Yeah.
And it was loud enough to kind of snap me out of what I was saying. And I looked to my left, and the cameraman, his whole head was on fire. He was a young guy, and he had a lot of gel in his hair. Like a lot of young Japanese guys, some of them kind of go overboard with the gel.
Yeah.
And this guy had a lot of it, and there were candles there, and he stood too close to the candles, and his whole head just burst. So I reacted kind of instinctively, where it wasn't like I didn't look at him and be like, oh, yo, hey, I moved towards him immediately. And I could heard some gasps of people in the crowd because all of a sudden the priest stops talking and he dives towards the cameraman, like, what's going on? The bride and groom, again, did not see this, or at least they didn't see it when it happened.
Yeah.
So I'm diving there with my hand about to, hit this guy in the head.
Yeah.
But he notices at the last second and just kind of quickly brushes his hand through his hair. There's a second or two where he does it and the flames go out, and he goes right back to filming. And he sticks his face like into the visor, like, into the thing, which, they don't have to do that with those cameras nowadays. But I'm sure he wanted to kind of like hide his shame because
right.
He was like, oh God, like face and camera. And I just jumped right back to where I was and kept reading from the script. Now, this all happened in about between a 3 to 5 second window.
Right. Yeah.
But it felt like so much longer. And I couldn't keep a straight face. Like through the rest of the wedding, I was trying to say the words, but I would chuckle like here and there. And this whole time I was in my head, I'm like, be serious, be professional, be professional.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, like, I now pronounce this husband and wife, like trying not to laugh.
Right.
So the fact that a guy almost caught, or basically did catch on fire mid wedding was an interesting one.
Yeah. So watch your head around candles, right?
Watch your head around candles. I didn't see him much after that, but whenever I did, I called him moe-kun, like as in the verb for to burn. Or, I don't think he liked that because he never talked to me after that. He just kind of looked at me and walked away. He might have gotten in big trouble for that. Like, I don't know.
That's a show stealer, man. Yeah.
It is. It wasn't his fault. Like, poor guy. Like, but honestly, things happen of like, and the smell was so bad. If the bride and groom didn't see it happening, they definitely smelt the aftermath because for a good 5 minutes, it just reeked of burnt hair. Like, all around the front of the pulpit and stuff. So, anyways, the show must go on. So it did, and then afterwards, I think I remember talking to like my. I think I was making too big of a deal out of it because it just totally took me out of my element.
Yeah.
And, the women that I worked with, I was like, "Did you see that?" And they were like, "Just forget it. Don't talk about it. Focus on the next wedding."
Yeah, well, it was a visible flame, right?
Yes, like as if his head. It wasn't like his
it's
entire
like Ghost Rider.
Basically, the top of his head had fire that was about 6 to 7 inches. No, maybe 5 inches
Yeah.
like coming off of his head. Like it wasn't just a little like candle flame.
Yeah.
It ignited,
Yeah.
and so there was he probably had a bald spot. Pretty nasty. So that
that's
has
pretty
to
funny.
be the one,
Yeah.
the biggest story. Other than that, nothing really major. Just little things happening when they're not supposed to.
Sure.
Sometimes the bride and groom would get these big balls that they would hang from the ceiling that were supposed to open at a certain time as they're leaving. They're popular in Japan. Like the big golden balls that open and like a flag comes out and lots of confetti and stuff.
Okay.
So a couple of times they had those, but they would just pop open mid wedding. Like, I'm talking and then bam, and it opens and. So everyone just kind of looks a little disappointed, and I just keep going. I'm just like, oh, your balloon popped, like
Yeah.
can't be helped. So
that's pretty normal. So
those have to be the moments.
Gotcha. All right. So there might be footage out there in some like Tanaka house of you like looking at the camera in utter shock.
I think they probably edited that out, and if that footage exists, it's like locked away in the editor's file folder somewhere, or probably deleted as like to burn the evidence.
Yeah, burn the evidence. Yes.
Yeah, forgive my pun there.
All right. Well, so if anybody wants to get in touch with you to, write an article or do translation, because Dan does some, awesome translation. He's been doing that for us at Wasabi Magazine from Japanese to English. Where can people contact you?
They can email me at danlegare@gmail.com. So DANLEGARE translations@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thanks for sharing your experiences working at weddings as a priest in Japan. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Ryan and I will be back in just a moment, so don't go anywhere. But really briefly, I just wanted to say, if you enjoyed that interview, then you may enjoy my other podcast. It's called Japan Station. On that show, I interview people every episode, somebody new, from authors to filmmakers to musicians. I've talked to all kinds of people. There's over 30 episodes at the moment and more coming out every month. So go check that out at japanstationpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And one last thing. There are pictures of Dan in the actual priest outfit. So if you want to go check those out, then check out the link at the full show notes at japankyo.com/Ichimon Japan. That is going to take you to the digital copy of the issue of Wasabi Magazine where his article was published. And in that layout, there's some really nice pictures of him actually wearing the priest outfit. So you can go check that out again, japankyo.com/Ichimon Japan, show notes, episode 4. All right, let's get back to me and Ryan. Okay, so Ryan, wasn't that a fun interview?
Oh, extremely.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Ryan.
Okay.
So, would you do this job? Would you be a fake priest in Japan?
Probably at least once. I like to try new things, and it sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's pretty decent money too. It's like It's like $100 for basically 25 minutes of work, right? Because he said like each session was about 25 minutes, so that's pretty good.
That sounds tempting. I mean, honestly, I like my weekends to be like completely free, so I don't know if it would be ongoing, but I definitely want to like just give it a shot.
Yeah. I mean, like you fit the bill. I mean, you're a tall white guy, so that is like the perfect look for that they want. So, yeah.
How about you?
I would certainly give it a shot, but I'm not a tall white guy, so I don't know if they would want me. Like something that I was thinking about after this interview was like, do Japanese priests ever feel kind of resentful? It's like, hey, I can do this too, but it's always like the foreigners. Like, so I
I'm
don't
gonna be
know,
honest.
like,
Before the story, I didn't even know they like sought out foreigners at all for this.
Yeah, it's a foreigner thing. Yeah, like, and like whether it's in anime or on like TV dramas or movies, like you'll always usually the kind of person that they'll depict doing this is an older white guy. And
Mm.
usually his Japanese is very accented. Like that's the stereotypical like portrayal of the like priest in Japanese weddings. Uh, and so I was wondering, like, when you go to a wedding, like bridal arrangement agency or whatever, and you fill out your forms and you say, you know, you want this and you want that. Like when they ask you, do you want a priest? Is
Like
there a
check
box
here
that
for
you can
foreigner.
check? Yeah. Do you want a foreign priest or do you want a Japanese priest?
How many centimeters tall is your minimum?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then if let's say there is no box and the couple shows up and they get a Japanese priest, would they be disappointed?
I mean, some would probably be, but I don't know if they'd say much.
Yeah, it'd be a really awkward thing to come up.
Never mind. We'll go to the other chapel.
And then the other thing that came up during the interview was the whole thing about rice. So I did do a quick search, and so Japanese weddings, some Japanese weddings do use rice. So it's not like a thing that Japanese people have never heard of, but yeah, it's just an interesting little thing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
my
Rice.
guess is I know in the West some people are trying to like stop using rice because it's bad for like birds and other wildlife. So
Yeah, yeah,
maybe
I've heard
same
that.
thing here with some trying to cut down on it. I don't know.
True, true. Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's just less common. And plus, I mean, it's food, but like we said, that doesn't stop the whole broccoli thing either. So,
Yeah, I it kind of makes me rethink my experience in Japan because I've been to a few like receptions and after parties, but I've never actually been invited to the actual wedding ceremony in Japan. And I've been here 8 years, so I guess I
yeah,
have no
nor have
friends.
I. Yeah, nor yeah, nor have I. I mean, yeah, I think if you meet a few more Japanese people, like once you move out of that area and you meet more people in your like age range, you're probably
Mm.
gonna, there's a good chance you'll have an invitation eventually. But I only went to one nijikai, which is like the after party,
Mm.
but that's it. I never actually went to a real wedding.
Yeah, I think I went to. I remember distinctly one, and I had another friend who got married, and I'm like, I probably went to his, but I don't remember it.
Jeez.
I must have. We were pretty good friends. I don't think he'd not invite me, but
Well,
I have
if
like
you
no
ever
memory at all.
if you ever have a
He invited me to
flashback,
his bachelor party. I do remember that at least.
oh, what's the Jap? Did you go?
I did not because it
Oh
was
man,
yeah, it was the
because
same as a Western one exactly.
what was like? I
They
mean,
just
okay,
spent
so,
like 3 hours at a strip club.
okay, that's what I was gonna ask because that's the stereotypical like Western, order a stripper or go to a strip club and drink a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Okay, so there we go. Question answered.
Well, he was British, so that
Oh,
might be
okay,
why. His wife was
gotcha,
Japanese, but
gotcha, gotcha. Well, I wonder if she was okay with that. Well, I guess she was okay with it in the end.
I'm not entirely certain she knew about it.
Aha, there you
I mean, I
go.
think she probably did, but like
Yeah,
no one explicitly said like, "Oh yeah, she knows." I just like
gotcha. All right. Well, Ryan, anything else you want to add about fake priests?
well, since we were talking about the if they would feel disappointed if it was a Japanese priest, one of my friends that knew when I lived in
Yeah.
Osaka, her father was a Japanese Christian pastor who did perform weddings.
Ah, okay.
So,
So,
actual Japanese wedding officiators definitely do
yeah,
exist.
yeah. Like I was,
Though I think he mostly did it for people who were like members of his church. So
yeah,
not just I guess there would be strangers too though. Probably fewer though than when these places.
probably, yeah. Like I was reading,
I never really asked for the specifics. Just sometimes she'd be like, "Oh, he's busy this time doing a weekend or doing a wedding."
right. Like I was reading, it was an article, seemed, I guess, yeah, it was written by like a religious studies researcher in Japanese. He was a Japanese guy, and he was explaining how this is this is a thing that exists because not all Japanese people are aware that these are that many of these guys doing this wedding officiation are actually just guys doing it as a part-time job, like they're not actual priests. So he was explaining this, and the way that he said it in one part was these are basically like Christian-ish weddings, like Cristo who, right? Like they're not actually like Christian weddings. They're not actually Christian priests. They're just who. They're just ish, right? They look like it, but they're not actually like legitimate, right? So, and then it was like a fake interview kind of thing. So then he poses as like
Fake priest and a fake interview.
well, yeah. So he writes a question of this like fake interviewer asking him like, "Oh, but sensei, you just upset women around Japan because you're like breaking their dream, right? You're like pulling the you're telling the truth here." And he's like, "Yeah, but that's how it is." So
I mean, from my experience in Japan, I don't think they're going to be that concerned.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really is just like, how do you want your wedding to look? Do you want it to look a certain way? And that's just one of the ways you can have it look, and that comes with a fake priest. So there you go.
As I mentioned with my friend's father, I think the people who are like serious Christians in Japan already go to a church and have a priest or minister they can just ask to do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this industry sounds like it's exclusively for people who just like want that appearance.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So I think this episode has gone on long enough.
Yeah. So let me tell you my 30-minute story now.
Oh, okay. Here we go. All right. Let's go get our hot chocolate and listen to Papa Ryan tell us a bedtime story.
Papa Ryan. It's about how I got the name Papa Ryan.
All right. So that does it. Go check out or subscribe, do all that stuff. Subscribe, review, tell your friends, blah, blah, blah. Japankyo.com.
Get married.
Yeah, get married with a Japanese priest. Come on, throw them a bone. They need some money too, all right? So all right, see you next time.
See ya.